and we'll go. Okay. Hopefully my machine won't break down in recording. Can you guys see the screen?
Not yet.
Good. Okay. So one of the things, I did an overview. If you guys remember last time, the overview really had this circle icon in the middle, and all those blocks were
Daryl?
You're not sharing the screen.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me see. Got it. All right. Hold on.
Perfect.
Can you guys see it now?
Yeah.
Everybody okay? Alvaro, you can see the screen?
Yes, perfectly fine.
Good. Okay. So last time I had all these blocks were colored in last time. You know, define, measure, analyze, improve, control. Those are the 5 major elements of what is known as the DMAIC model. DMAIC comes from the Six Sigma practice. And we've sort of, the reason I call this mixed method approach is because not only are we couching these things in terms of how an Adizes practitioner would execute, but as we go along the way, you know, I want you guys to become familiar with the terminology from one of the other disciplines. So DMAIC, by definition, comes out of the Six Sigma world. But we sort of use it to sort of gauge where we are in the decision-making process, okay, in terms of a mixed methodology approach. So what I'm going to talk about for the next few slides is the area of define. So how do you define? You know, I'm on Shredar's idea of defining, but before I do that, last time the big takeaway from that overview, it was a very fast overview, was that we got an idea that a theory of constraints allow us to focus on the particular challenges that we see in a value stream, and the value stream comes from lean. And the value stream allows us to see the waste. We're looking to see the waste, and we covered the 8 waste. I may not touch upon that this time, but I will review it before we're done with the 4 sessions. The accuracy, stability of a process when we have the upper specification limit and, you know, the lower specification limit, you know, basically is that process in the realm of what a customer's expectations are. So Six Sigma is about accuracy, lean is about seeing the waste and making it visible, and theory of constraint was about focus, and all of them were from the perspective of the customer. So that was sort of what we did, a quick overview last week. Okay, so in this session, this first session where we talk about define, we're going to look at, well, how do you go about defining a charter for a Kaizen of what we call rapid improvement event. So you can call it a Kaizen rapid improvement event. And I harp on the fact that these are elements very similar to the center team's efforts, okay? When you think of Kaizen, it is another way of viewing center teams, in my opinion. Where is this? Oh, there we go. I keep hitting the wrong thing. So I took the opportunity when we're framing this, let me move my pictures here. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to move you guys around so I can see. Okay. So I'm managing my screen here, trying to move your guys' pictures to the side. So basically, I took the opportunity at a high level. We're going to go into mapping right now, mapping the process. Mapping the process is a technique where you make the process visible. And I remind you guys, of the 1 week course, which is 40 hours, I sort of cherry picked the main topics of which I knew best and I thought most relevant. Okay, there are a few topics, you know, you can go into statistical process control, and that might bore us in a session such as this. If we were live and could go to the board and write things, I might have picked a few different sessions. But I picked the ones I thought most relevant to how I know Adizes operates. And here's what I took from that. At the highest level, after you do what is the equivalent of a SINDAG, which they call the executive planning session, I just took that and put it to the side, take and think about a SINDAG. Out of that SINDAG, theoretically, a value stream ought to emerge. A value stream is a functional view. It's strategic in nature, but it's not strategic about a business. It's strategic about a function. And a value stream requires a team get together. And you want a PAEI as well as CAPI. I could have put CAPI on the other side of this slide, but I sort of was tracking with the thoughts of a PAEI. But a value stream, by definition, would reside in that nexus between, conflicts of interest as well as conflicts of style. And when you're defining the problem space of a value stream, you really are dealing with both. And so as a result of the value stream analysis, see, the VSA is a key concept in lean practices. So the value stream analysis results in three kinds of things. And we know it in Adizes is you look at a PIP, you could categorize PIPs and you could go, oh, that's just a P. We'll just P that. They call it just do it in lean parlance. Just do it. Someone has enough CAPI within themselves that's in their job description. Go make that happen, okay? And that's simply something that's a function of, let's say, a center team's illumination. A rapid improvement event takes a team. And I would tell you that all these teams have primarily P as the driver. You're being put in play to take action on something. And in a team environment that is at the scope of a rapid improvement event, it's a specific amount of time. And so I see that as a PE kind of a function, where it's a cross-functional team. It's usually facilitated by a green belt, who is someone that a green belt, a certified green belt, would be someone who's at least attended a 1-week course and have on their own, much like we certified folks in Adizes level 1 and 2, they have done at least 3 to 4 events on their own, maybe 1 or 2 supervised, 3. After that, they're running on their own and they can facilitate anything. That's a green belt. And a lot of these slides are taken from that level of practice, the green belt level. Projects, which by definition are larger and more complex in scope, theoretically, not absolute, but theoretically would require a little more expertise. And thus you have a black belt leading these complex projects because you might have some statistical analysis. You might have a number of political things across the organization you need to deal with. And so with the black belt comes a bit more heft, and 1 or 2 green belts would be assisting this black belt, okay, on projects. Projects are more complex, longer in nature. So here is an idea of the scope and the change that's being implemented. So just do it. Generally, it's something in 1 to 2 days. It's a solution ready, implement the problem, it's well-defined, and the people who assigned you know about it, and the time horizon is immediate. You need to just get that done. Put it in the done pile, put it in the done pile, quick. A Kaizen, rapid improvement event, is the type of a thing that takes 2 to 3 weeks to plan. You execute it within 3 to 5 days. Now, when you contrast that with center teams, your center teams may meet 1 or 2 hours a week for a series of weeks. In the Kaizen, it's an event-based thing. You've prepared things. The center court folks in Adizes parlance have done some preliminary groundwork, and we're going to go to an event week, and we're going to take some folks offline for 1, 2, or 3 days. Generally, 3 to 5 days. The more experience an organization has in conducting Kaizen, that 3 to 5 days shrinks to a half day to 2 days, something like that. Everybody with me? You guys okay?
Yes, just a quick comment, Daryl.
Mm-hmm.
I think they just do it in Adizes. We call them PAs, not only Ps.
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. You're right. I struggle with that, but we yes. Yeah. You're right.
Okay.
We call it the PA task.
PA test. Yeah. And I had that in my mind when I was doing it, but when we practice it, we would just say just P that thing. So, but it was yes. You're right. I stand corrected. Thank you. And I realize, you guys, English is my first language, of which I only speak kind of good. And so if I talk too fast, because I know English is a second language, please let me know, you guys, because I'll get to going. And stop me if I'm talking too fast. So the scope of change with the Kaizen and this was me interpreting what a Kaizen is. I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts. This is essentially a small team, 6 to 8 people. Okay, it's short term in terms of the scope of the work. This should be something that these 6 to 8 people, who are the people who actually do the work, maybe with a conduit from another organization with similar interests in that function, in that process, so to speak. Short term, high intensity effort to address specific problems. There's something well defined here. And the full-time during event, all right? 4 size of the team, 4 to 6, 4 to 12. Me personally, I like 6 to 8, but I've seen teams as many as 20 people, which I always thought was a problem. Because if you have 20 people, you probably have 2 tasks, and you could have descoped and separated them, in my opinion. But that's an art. That's an artistic decision, kind of management art. Time to implement, immediate to short term. Like just a bit more than a PA, but it shouldn't take more than 6 weeks to do this thing. A project.
Quick question, Daryl.
Yes.
So in this rapid improvement event, people usually just leave their work for 2 to 5 days, 3 to 5 days.
Yes.
And
here's
it's like a very long or prolonged senior team that runs for that time, and then afterwards they come and implement whatever they decided in that meeting.
They actually, yeah. So last time we talked about this, they actually, ideally, a center team, a Kaizen team, rapid improvement team would take 2 to 3 weeks prep. That's center core, doing some just-in-time information exchange. That's a charter being agreed upon between the POC and the center team, so to speak. But essentially, the answer to your question, Alvaro, is yes. And the idea behind it that's different is you might take, and I don't know the average length of your center teams. What would the average length of a center team exist? A month, 2 months, 3 months? What would be the average amount of time?
Between POC to POC, like 45 days.
Okay, 45 days. And on average, they would have met how many hours?
Maybe 3 to 4 hours per week.
So 3 to 4 hours a week for about 6 weeks. So, you're looking at 2 days maybe, something like that, 2 to 3 days. So either you do the 2 to 3 days stretched out like that, or you do the 2 to 3 days in one intense session. The one thing that rapid improvement events and Kaizens do that I don't know if the center team does is, and I can only speak from the implementation that we've done, is essentially in the same week you do the change of the process. You enhance, improve, reduce waste, whatever your target goals are. You address those in that event week, and you go and educate during that same week on that Thursday or that Friday, everyone who has a stake in that process in that organization. Besides that small team of 6 to 10 people that have been empowered to go make that change, they now acknowledge that this is going to touch 45, 50 other people. How they go out, inform those people that the process has changed, and next week, when we come back, the process has changed. So we had a policy that the event was prepared for 2 to 3 weeks. It happened in 2 to 3 days, rarely 4 days. On that 4th day is a day of training. You go and tell everybody. On the 5th day, you prepare your summary so that every 2 weeks, when there was a POC, or Command Change Council, we called it, that would meet, and the center team would go and report out. So every 2 weeks, some center team was reporting out in this organization. So essentially, short answer is yes. Did that help you, Alvaro?
Yes, thank you very much. And just from your experience, Daryl, do you think that there might be an area of opportunity here of running sort of like a particular set of senior teams with this intensity mode instead of the way we do it? So that was sort of like the underlying question for me.
I mean, I think so. But, I've always appreciated the yes. I mean, the short answer is I think so. But it takes a bit of acculturation. You have to, the POC or the Command Change team. See, once you buy into a paradigm, if you're going to interject some other paradigm, everybody needs time to process that. Okay, it wasn't hard for us because we implemented Adizes first, so we knew the concept of center teams. And before we got going too much with center teams, Lean hit us, and so we just took the vernacular of Adizes, resources, integrator, administrator, and we had made those assignments doing a Kaizen. So those roles are already identified in the Kaizen. But the essential difference is just what you point out. You can meet 3 or 4 hours for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, the whole team, or you can prepare what you need to do it in a couple of days, educate those that it impacts, and what we would say is on the following Monday, that's implemented, and you start collecting indicators and metrics. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it would take some thinking and some intent to get there. So here's another view of how you identify improvement opportunities. I didn't cover executive planning session, but the executive planning session is where you take business strategy, value stream maps, and customer issues that you collected either through environmental scans, surveys, or whatever you do. And you're going to, at a top level, determine what are the critical value streams that bring value to this organization. Okay, and then as you go about walking, talking to employees, hearing things, employees will tell you through suggestions, however you formalize that, through just insightful managers knowing what the hell is going on, and obvious constraints of which everybody in the plant knows about and laughs and jokes at lunchtime about. The hot issues that are all right now, everybody's like, oh God, this CNC machine is down. What are we going to do? This customer A, we know next week had an order. So, these hot issues come up from the bottom. Strategic, intentional issues come from the top. And the top-down, bottom-up approach is what really yields you, much in the manner we do a SINDAG, what are the things that need to be addressed in short order and in long order. I'm gonna zoom through these next few slides because the paradigm.
Daryl.
Yes.
Somewhere down the line, would you be sort of taking an example and the previous slide, if you could move to. So somewhere down the line in your presentation, would you be sort of taking some specific issue that had been given to a Kaizen and just breaking these down and saying, okay, what are the hot issues? How did you sort of?
I have a couple examples, Sridhar.
Okay.
And normally we would do some exercises. So I'm going to feel my way through the exercises. And rather than do an exercise, what I will try to do is listen to you guys respond. So when we get to this exercise, which normally someone would get up and go put a Post-it on the board or something like that. So yes, I do have some examples. They're generic in nature, and hopefully you guys can identify with them. Okay. So I do.
Okay.
Top-down identification. Senior manager will typically use this to target those things they feel are the most valued and need to be addressed. Projects are selected either because the cycle time is too long, there's too much waiting, too much lead time, and the common sense is this is taking way too long. Things like that jump out at people when they're trying to identify opportunities to improve. To perform high levels with superior quality because you have market forces coming at you, they're doing it faster, better, cheaper. Why are we held up? There's business situations for future, simply cost reductions. The military, where I work, did this for cost reductions, which, by the way, is not the best motivator to have people come and tell you what's wrong with their organization, because they may end up thinking, oh, once I show you all that's wrong, you may say to me, oh, we don't need you, Daryl. So you have all those kinds of things going on. Improving throughput. So what should I be doing? What should I do? What should I be doing in my work area? Based on training, look for the low-hanging fruit. This is what, we do something just-in-time training. So before center team stacks up, I'm sure there's an hour or two spent making sure everyone on that center team has been exposed to the Adizes methodology, correct? Generally, right? When you guys do a center team, it's expected that all center team players have a sufficient amount of understanding of Adizes. Am I correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. So,
no, in some way, yes, in some way, no, because, the center teams normally take into account many things. So as long as the integrator is able to sort of integrate and get the newer people in, just to contribute their resources, make them understand this is the task in front of us. Yes, in the initial time, we don't lay too much emphasis and say, okay, get educated, do the seminar team participants. So
Okay.
they can come a little raw, but it depends on the integrator.
Well, I mean, it's not a lot of time had to be spent, but usually we found grounding people for a good hour of what we call just-in-time training and let them know what the terminology and the why we're doing it, all those kinds of things. But based on the exposure they have to understanding the importance behind why poor quality needs to be addressed, why confusion needs to be addressed, you would think on the surface these are common sense, but until people actually get together, step away from their day-to-day, push it down the line, and actually talk about what they're doing, revelations occur. Keys to success, much in the same vein of,
Darryl,
yes?
could you explain what throughput means?
Okay, so throughput is the concept of I am triggering the process when I give this widget to Mary. Mary is the first person in the process to do something with this thing. She finishes it, puts it down the line. Throughput is the total amount of time it takes to go from beginning to end, from triggering to giving the customer a result. And so you have lead time. Lead time is the time in between the process time where you're actually adding value to something. So lead time, process time, in total is what's considered throughput from beginning to end. Okay? That's a good question because you have different books. I have a number of books, I have all kinds of books, which, by the way, there's a series of books called Memory Joggers. And what I would normally do is I would provide these to a week-long class. And there's several books, and I can send a list of resources of ones that I think are good. They're good reference books. Little books you keep with you that gives you terminology, basics of processes, and things like that. The throughput is that total time to get through the process. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So keys for success, you would expect the normal things: clear project boundaries, clear statement of requirements and expectations, assigned responsibilities, realistic timeframes. These discussions happen in that preparatory phase before the event takes place. This is what we know as a Senate Core would be working out amongst themselves. The integrator, the process champion, which is maybe a representative from a POC, and then the implementer. So the integrator, the implementer, and maybe I'm missing the administrator there, but essentially there would be a conversation between the administrator, the integrator, the implementer, who generally was a first line supervisor with us, and a checking in regularly with someone that's from the POC that we would call a value stream champion. So someone on the POC, maybe at a high divisional level, department level, has an insight that this thing is a problem. They've assigned a manager to it. That manager, that administrator, and that integrator are working up these issues. Make sense?
Okay, it makes sense. What I'm realizing, Darryl, you're using some of these terms for our understanding, that POC, the implementer. But when somebody is practicing lean by themselves, okay, and they're doing it they don't have Adizes at all, okay?
Right.
In that case, how does this flow? I mean, is there a POC which is called something else in Lean? Is there an implementer which is called something in Lean?
Here's a good question, and and I can give you a supplement in the posting of what the team looks like, but essentially, let me see.
Okay, this is your Senati assignment sheet, sort of.
Yeah, this sort of gets to some of that. So what I was building to let me go back, and I'm going to get to your answer. Let me go back. So define the team's mission, the charter. We're about to go over a charter. So a project is chosen because of one of the following reasons: significance of unexplained variation in the process, lots of root cause issues, complex issues, so on and so forth, right? Everything you would expect if you're doing basic analysis of some kind of problem. It's no different than any other kind of problem solving. But I think this charter kind of answers your question, Sridhar. So here's the normal organizational elements. You would have a sponsor. Think of a sponsor as someone in executive management who says, I'm going to knock down the barriers for you. You're going to go attack this process, and you're going to attempt to improve this process. You're going to step on some toes. You're going to piss off some people. You might even impact some folks' budgets. But that's okay. I got you covered. I have a seat on the executive committee or a senior executive, whatever the board is. It could be an executive board. Take it away, Pac. What we establish and what most organizations would establish is something called value stream champions. Value stream champions are folks designated by the organization to be a sponsor of that entire value stream for a year. I am the value stream champion for modernization and installations in my organization. A lot of rhyme there, but that point is, you would have 6 to 8 critical value streams that the business has decided we need to make all this work better. And for each one of those value streams, they will assign a sponsor. This is a collateral duty of their day-to-day work. So in their day-to-day work, 95% of the time, they do what they need to do as a manager. 5% of that time, they're going to check in with their improvement teams. And their improvement teams will come to them when they're running into roadblocks of people not wanting to participate, not wanting to answer their questions. So that's the role of the sponsor, the value stream champion or sponsor. A green belt.
One question.
Mm-hmm.
Is sponsored the person in authority, or is it sort of a body of people who come together? It's one person, right?
It's best to be one person. Maybe
okay. So is this charter being given by the sponsor, right? Yes. The assignment is defined by the sponsor, right?
Yes. Yes.
So the assignment is not in Adizes. We say we give an assignment not as a person who's there, but as a body, which is a POC. Okay. So even if I am a sponsor, but I have to be in the POC, or I have to suggest to the POC and say, okay, here is an assignment you should give as a Sena team. In here, you have one person who defines the assignment, right?
Yes. However, that person usually will have a seat on an executive committee or on like, for instance, we had 6 value stream champions, and those 6 value stream champions comprise the horizontal value stream council. So it's a council of a kind. So while one person will be the responsible human being for executing this charter, he or she actually sits with a group of other like-minded people who sponsor different value streams. You see, they are chartered as a value stream council by executive board to be responsible for process improvement. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I'm somewhere down the line, I'm probably, after we understood this, we want to sort of also map and say, okay, lean functions in this way, but these are the things that it is very unstructured, where Adizes comes in and says, okay, not one person, but a body defines it. Somewhere we can say that, okay, here is where Adizes comes and gives a more coherent structure to the entire process. Is there something like that at the end?
Say that again, Sridhar. Say that again.
For example, the sponsor here in this case, and I may be wrong, but it seems that there is one person, though however powerful, and he has a seat in the executive committee. He is the one who defines the charter, okay? And he takes the responsibility of creating the team, giving the assignment, okay? Mm-hmm. While in Adizes, we sort of say, even you're a very good, powerful person, you're a factory manager, whatever, you mm-hmm. still have to go to the POC and create the assignment sheet in the POC, not as an individual, okay? So if this is a difference, the advantage in the POC method is that there is a collective prioritization, that, okay, we launch this in a team first, We launch the other cylinder teams next, so you keep allocating cylinder teams. That's the advantage in the POC.
Right.
Disadvantage in this particular method is, one guy says, I find this more important. This value stream is most important.
No. Let me reset the context for you. So remember, I mentioned that we implemented Adizes first. We had a POC. We didn't call it a POC. It was pretty much set up on the Adizes methodology. We did a syndag, and from that point forward, what we called Command Change Council. It was called the Command Change Council.
Okay.
We branded the Adizes methodology in our organization with our own terminology. And that was Clark Wigley, who was the Adizes practitioner at our site for a number of years. Clark was, he just let this be. I always would wonder, why don't we just call it the POC? Because I was wanting to do the pure stuff. And Clark insightfully allowed a natural thing to occur. But what I would tell you, Sridhar, is the Command Change Council would have what was called an executive planning session every year at the beginning of the year to determine how well did we do last year on what we targeted, look at the results. Then they would essentially look at the value streams that matter for the next year or two that's coming up and reprioritize those. At that point, the members of the Command Change Council were in essence functioning as a POC and blessing the 6 or 7 top value streams that will be focused on for that year, and then assign an executive. And these executives only had this tour for 1 year. Okay, this year I am the sponsor for engineering processes. And that person had that position for 1 year, and they had the responsibility to be the sponsor and to be a conduit to what Adizes called the POC that we call the Command Change Council. So it's one and the same. There's not an either or there. It's just that we blended on purpose. After our Command Change Council was established by Adizes and Clark, we then were mandated from headquarters to do lean stuff. And so we just took the apparatus, was the Command Change Council, and we took our champions from there, and they took responsibility for value stream. So it's not an either or kind of thing. Does that make sense? Hopefully that helps you a little bit.
Yeah, it does, but I think, carry on. I think we'll pick up some things on the way. Yeah.
Okay. So a green belt is think of a green belt as simply a facilitator. Think of a black belt as someone on the level of an Adizes certified associate that's been through at least certified in the first 3 levels of Adizes. They have a deeper understanding of how change happens, how organizational improvements ought to occur. Now, there may be a paradigm they're using, and there are other paradigms out there, but these people are the folks who would be involved. Team members would be anybody in that organization doing the work, and oftentimes we bring a customer in or a supplier in to be a part of the team. I won't bore you with, on the left side, how you scope a project. You pretty much, in any problem-solving methodology, will be able to figure that out. But you do want to be explicit about the goals because they matter to the boundaries. You don't want such fuzzy boundaries that you bleed into other things. Okay? And there's governing documents and procedures. There are a number of things that may exist already that people say, wait, we have processes, regulations, and procedures already. All that is reviewed in the build-up to the Kaizen event and brought, if necessary, to the Kaizen event if things start to change and you start deciding that you need to change policies when you don't have that authority. Those are conversations that happen later. So
Daryl, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide how many projects can you run at the same time? And how do you prioritize them?
Okay. So when I mentioned before the executive planning session, the executive planning session is a meeting of the Command Change Council in their role, which they met once a year to do, actually twice a year. Beginning of the year, the executive planning session responsibility was to look at the business, decide at the highest level of the organization what value streams are key and important to us this year. Then they had a method, and I'll post up a slide after this session because I consciously did not put the executive planning session in here. focus on how things get done. But those priority decisions of where to focus for the next year comes from a meeting of the Command Change Council to determine the priorities. The priorities are determined as a collective group with the Command Change Council, after which time they determine these things are not important, these 4 things are important. And so it is the executive planning session focused on process improvement, where those priority decisions and targets of value streams are discussed and decided upon. Did I answer the question?
Daryl, let me ask this a little bit differently. From what you said, I understood that you have specific experience with what you explained. But my question is, if we will come over a company who is working with Lean, would they have the same process as you described? So is there inside Lean technology such a body as which as equivalent to what we understand with POC, or there is not? What is taught to
normally
green belts and black belts? Do they actually know how to create such a body?
Do they know how to create such a what?
Such an executive change management something.
Yes.
So we call it POC. It's like obvious for us. But do Lean practitioners practice something similar?
Yes. In my experience, and I've been to many Lean conferences, lots of Lean conferences. I presented at MIT on a panel about Lean enterprise. And my assessment over the 12 years I've engaged with Lean, well, more, maybe 10 years, something like that. The short answer is yes, Vladimir. And basically, it is very similar. It's very similar in its intent to, while you have 95% of the time, you're doing PA, you're doing blocking and tackling, you're operating the business. Lean, another organization is set up. For instance, I was assigned to the executive director of the station. My responsibility was as the Lean champion for the station. So all 2,000 people, I was given 6 people who worked directly for me full-time on staff, and in each department there was an assigned black belt full-time. So there was a staff of 12 people full-time, half staff, half in the actual departments, whose charge was to be the Lean organization implementing change at the organization. So there was in that, I facilitated, as an in-house integrator, I facilitated the Command Change Council. Clark did it for 5 years. Clark left. I took it over. And in that Command Change Council, we didn't just only deal with Lean. We did deal with, strategy and other things that the command was dealing with. But I always facilitated the Command Change Council, which was an EI function. At the executive board, I sat in the back of the room. And that executive board met every week to do their regular stuff. But every couple of months, when the Command Change Council was deciding this, that, or the other thing, I was, as the station's transformation manager, charged with also being the station's Lean champion. I was the main facilitator. That's how we functioned. And the group that was set up to be the implementers for Lean are, not only were they trained in Adizes for what we called organizational change management, they were also trained in Lean for process improvement. And so most organizations will have a shadow organization set up to be responsible to implement Lean. Some people may do it full-time. A lot of people do it part-time with 1 or 2 full-time individuals. We happen to have 12 full-time individuals and probably 20 or 30 part-time green belts. Does that answer your question?
Not really, but let's see farther on how we're going.
Look, can I make an attempt? Can I make an attempt? Okay. If you don't mind, Darrell, let me share my screen with you.
Okay.
If you can unshare, and maybe I'll just say,
Okay.
share
All
my
right.
screen. Okay.
All right. Let me yeah.
Yeah. We cannot share while the other participant is sharing. Okay. If you just stop sharing, I can.
Once I wait, let me.
You have to just stop sharing it. No, at the bottom, the share screen, the middle icon.
Oh, there it is. Okay. All right.
You can just stop sharing.
Okay.
Okay. Let me share mine. Okay. Okay. There you go. Okay. So here's how we do it in Adizes, right? We create after the syntax, we create a EI structure, which is the POC here.
Okay. So wait. All right. Wait.
And, yeah. Right. Now, what the question was that in Lean and where they do not practice Adizes at all, like you practice Adizes there, and that's why you, when they don't practice at all, what is this called? Is this called the command chain council all the while, or they do not have a structure and they?
That is called the command chain council. Yes. This slide was the key slide that we used. So
right, but the question was that there are purists who do not practice Adizes and they're just doing Lean. In that, do they have the structure or do they have it very loose? That was the question. This POC decides what center teams to launch, but in Lean where they do not have Adizes, how do they decide on the priority? That was the question. Okay, because here we have a particular way of doing it as a group. Okay, the question was whether there was a particular structure that was there in Lean. That's all.
And my response is okay. So because we did kind of put it on top of Adizes, so this is how we function. Now, when I mentioned all the conferences I had gone to, the fact of the matter was they would always represent what a Lean operational organization looked like, and usually it was a circle. And I can put that after the session. I believe this, you guys. Most organizations practicing Lean in a real way, they will have some kind of a staff function that may not necessarily take advantage of the Adizes construct the way we did. So we were a hybrid, but they would have something like that. Now, whether or not they took the benefit that we did of having the POC kind of organization set up to tap into, I don't really know. So I don't really know. My experiences, it was always a hybrid, and we had already had the Adizes apparatus set up. But I have seen pictures, and I know that usually when a Lean implementation is taking place, there's a senior executive that reports to the head of the organization who's charged with implementing Lean. For instance, the plant we toured when we were in Monterey, what was it called? Fraser? They showed us their presentation, and they had a whole different organization set up to do their Lean. Now, my question was, when I saw this picture, how do the Lean people who's over here, and they showed it, how are they talking with the Adizes folks who was in another vein? And I just thought that was interesting. So, yeah, I mean, that's all I could say about that. I would say they probably have something set up, generally speaking, if they're doing it well. It may not be done as well as what we did, in my opinion, because we benefited from the previous Lean setup, the previous Adizes structure that Clark set up that we had before Lean showed up for us. Okay.
So the reason why the question is getting asked is, if there is a gap out there in Lean where there is no defined structure, there is no way, that's where we actually pitch in and say, yes, it's good something Lean is doing, but here's a much more structured way in which you can use Lean.
I think so. That's all. Yeah. I think so. They will have something, you guys, and I'll send you 1 or 2 slides of the general approach they all take. But we had already had, so yeah. So I would think that's an opportunity if you could say, and you have to be able to say it in a way that doesn't, kick them to the curb like you have nothing. because they'll have something, but it will not be, in my opinion, as beneficial as the POC setup that cascades things. By having the POC set up, we were already, because we had done a number of cascading syntax too. That was all done before Lean showed up. And so we had a scaffolding already constructed to where we just poured the Lean content in it, and stirred the pot and blended it with our center team concepts.
And one more thing.
Thank you, Sridhar. Thank you, Daryl. It answered my question.
Yeah, and here's how we constitute a POC, right? We don't have people just from here, right up here, but we have people sitting here, here, and that becomes a POC because they launch it,
Yes.
So how do they? I mean, if there is no defined way of doing this in Lean, there's a great add-on that Adizes can pitch.
Yes, that's true. I think so. That's absolutely true. I'll send you guys a picture of the normal way a Lean organization is set up. It's a pseudo organization that's laid on top of the real organization, and so that's an opportunity for an Adizes practitioner to say. And I saw this at Fraser. If you saw the presentation, Fraser has a Lean organization. They have Lean practitioners there. The question I had when I saw the presentation was, how collaborative are the Lean practitioners with the Adizes methodologists? And I can't remember if the answer was solid. You're being given a presentation by the company. You don't want to point out holes and problems in their thing, because the idea is to affirm. You always want to affirm the goodness that might be there, and then go about the task of revealing to them an even better way of enhancing their practice. Vis-a-vis, you have a Kaizen team, but wouldn't it be better if that Kaizen team knew that you are resources, you are the integrator, you are the administrator. Now that doesn't happen happenstance. We were unique in how we did the blending of those things.
Okay.
So there's a definite opportunity for the Adizes methodology to enhance a Lean existing practice, in my opinion.
I would go to suggest that if you could be a purist, and just say Lean has only this, as if Adizes was not practice, and then we could actually identify those gaps, But as you said, you're a hybrid already.
Daryl.
Yeah.
Should we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's take 5 minutes. Thank you, guys. I hope this is benefiting you guys. And if I don't get to all the slides, that's all right, because whatever we have to talk to, the goal is to make sure you guys see ways and means that the Adizes practice can enhance either an existing Lean practice, or, if necessary, and the client itches to bring Lean in, we have a facility and a way and a means by which to make that happen for them, so that we're not faced with it either or, but we could do both and. And we could do both and primarily by depending on that POC center team cascaded effect. So we take 5, you guys?
Yeah, let's take 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I think the 5 minutes are over.
Okay, I'm here.
All right, are we back?
I'm back. Alvaro's back.
All right. Let me warm up my coffee. All right. I really appreciate the questions, you guys. So we're at the halfway point, and I want to honor everybody's time. But before I move on, are there any questions still? Because I think it's important that, there's not so much I get through all the slides I've laid out if we had no questions, but it's more important that whatever hits your mind at the moment in time, we're kicking around some thoughts. I think is real relevant and important to flesh out those questions because they inform us in the manner we need to be. The intent behind this is really what I call to inoculate a decent practitioner with enough of the language of Lean, Six Sigma, and Theory of Constraint that we could defend, if you will, our goodness. That's the way I'll put it.
It's not a question, it's just a thought, a suggestion, and maybe you just follow a normal practice, a normal natural flow. If you could just take a purist standpoint, like I said,
Okay.
just practice and Lean,
Okay.
and tell us from that standpoint, use those terminologies, okay, which are used there.
Okay.
And you can make a quite quick reference that, okay, if this is a command chain council in Adizes, it's called POC, but then you stick to your terminology. It'll help us in, really getting the real feel of the pure system.
All right,
okay?
so
then at the next stage, we go into actually making a comparison and say, okay, how does it, yeah.
So let me make sure I understand. So maybe what I should do is continue on just as I'm presenting to someone simply wanting to learn Lean.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would say
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you for that calibration. I will do that. That's good. I was trying to over-identify with you guys. So, okay, I will take a Lean purist point of view. All right. My coffee's ready. I'll be right back.
Is that a good thought? The others, or you would want it to continue this way? This was my thought. So.
Yeah, this is why my question was. So I totally agree that we should look at the pure Lean.
Got it.
And then fill gaps.
Okay. Good. Okay, good. Thank you, guys. That's a good calibration. So with that, I will, for the next 2 sessions, I will stop putting in my little Adizes blurbs, and I'll just stick with the Lean script. So I'm going to go through these last few slides here. An example of an opportunity or problem statement. It needs to be clear. And here's a poor example. It takes too long to process a material order form and wrong parts are ordered, okay? A better, more well-defined problem statement addresses the what, where, when, the extent, and what is the impact. And specifically, you need to get some details in there. The material order process for Southwest region takes in excess of 30 days. Specificity, it takes in excess of 30 days. I have a number there. This is important. The problem has existed for the past year. Okay, so we're defining not only what it is, but where and why it's been a challenge. 85% of the orders required were due to wrong parts. Okay. And that's the extent of the thing. This has resulted in a postponement of 60 projects in the last 6 months. So there's an impact. So what is the problem? Where is it occurring in the Southwest? When? It has been on for 30 days, and the extent to what it is 85% are due of the orders required rework due to the wrong parts. And the impact is this, we have postponed 60 projects in the last 6 months. This becomes a crisp problem statement, which is necessary for a good charter to be implemented or to be at least agreed upon by the senior leaders and the implementers. And on all cases, whenever possible, we like to tell folks you should have what's called SMART goals. There is something specific. There is something measurable. The people in the room can say to themselves, okay, if we measure it in this manner, we know the baseline data is this. If we go about improving that, there's something that we can achieve in that. And it has relevance to what the problem at hand is. And we need to do this such that these time boundaries are honored. And so we call it SMART. You'll always have a SMART goal. You should always have the SMART goals. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable by the people doing the work. It's relevant to the task, and there is a time element to it. Okay, we would have done a charter exercise, but I'm going to spare you guys the exercises because I think this format doesn't lend itself well to that. Okay. Any questions? I mean, the task of developing a charter would be simply to go back to the few slides. And we would attempt to fill in these.
Is this the standard format that Lean practically uses?
There's 3 or 4 different ones, but this is pretty standard. You have
there are different standards, but this one is one, right?
Yes, because you have a number of organizations out there selling Lean practices, but this is pretty standard. This is a 1-page charter. Sometimes it ends up in 2 pages based on how much detail you put into it. But you set directions and you bound the problem space with a few sentences. What are the major goals? These are the goals, in essence, that we looked at in terms of, I just talked about the impact, the extent, those things. You recast that problem statement in objective terminology and determine whether value needs to come out. The scope, the baseline metrics, the process begins and ends. You have these things identified, and the way begin and ends is an important way of bounding the problem space at the time. What governing
Okay, but each team, wherever Lean is practiced, will definitely have a charter sheet like this, right?
Yes.
Okay, and these are the bare essentials that have to be covered, right? Scope,
yes,
team member.
This is bare essential.
Okay.
Yeah, and the charter summary, you start with that title, and so these are the bare essentials. That's a good way of putting it. Whether it's a Kaizen, a project, or a value stream, and know that it's a cascaded thing. Executive planning session, because these are the priorities. After that, a value stream is looked at, and we're getting ready to go into that. So you go from executive planning session to value stream, and you're going to engage in value stream analysis. In order to do that value stream analysis, you must have a charter to bound the problem space. And so we are finished with the charter. We're not going to do a charter exercise, but I wanted to make sure you guys got the appreciation that in designing a Lean effort, it starts with executive planning session. It goes then to value streams, and the beginning of the Lean analysis starts at value stream analysis at a high level. And this is the barriers to success that you're attempting to design a value stream analysis around. You're going to scope so the team is not too small or large. These are barriers. So you don't want it too large, too small. You don't want to come right off the bat with solutions in mind, unavailable resources. All these things could have your Lean initiative go sideways at any level. I mean, so.
Could you just leave it on? Could you just leave it on, those barriers, for a minute? Politics, wrong people, unclear event objectives, conflict.
And I set these slides to you guys.
No problems. I'm just wondering, the next would be the running of these Kaizen meetings. Are those having some rules that will tackle all these barriers to success, or you are just making them aware that these are barriers to success and please don't?
I would say they're not necessarily rules associated with these.
Basically, rules for the meeting. Basically.
Yeah. These are these are know these things. So.
Oh, okay. So the green belt does not have any way in which he will say, people have come with solutions in mind. He doesn't have a method to sort of deal with solutions in mind, or
Well,
does he have a method to deal with conflict? Does he is he equipped with something like that? The green belt or
most
belt?
of them would have gone through some kind of facilitation training. So all of the green belts, if they're certified green belts, would have had a couple of hours, if not a day or so, training in facilitation. Now, to the degree that they can, realize when solutions are in the conversation too early, or realize that politics are at play, or realize that the conflict can't be dealt with, is a function of how experienced the green belt is, and whether or not they're informed with something like Adizes or some other methodology that help them deal with people in it.
Is it very deep enough, the facilitation training, to deal with all of these barriers?
In my opinion, I would say no. In my opinion, but that's just my opinion. And because remember, I'm biased, because I was exposed to these way before. I can't help but say that. So it depends on experience. So you could get a very experienced lean person who knows nothing else but lean, and they probably could deal with all of this because they have years of experience in facilitating. I mean, Adizes hasn't cornered the market on facilitation. There's a lot of effective facilitation skill sets out there. So what we've covered, we've identified ways to improve opportunities. We discussed creating a charter, the pluses and minuses of improvement opportunities vice problem statement, dealing in effect with some of the goals we want to approach and attack. And we briefly discussed the barriers, and we just highlighted with Sridhar the level of experience of a facilitator / green belt / black belt, and what they've been exposed to, whatever methodology they use to get to clarity. That is a function, I think, of experience, in my opinion. So we went through an effort where we were dealing simply with defining the problem space. And I have a number of slides here. We may not get through all of these, but I'm walking you down the path. We define it. We made a conscious decision for ourselves going forward in these discussions. I'm going to transmit purely lean concepts to the best of my ability. And so that helped us define better what it is we're attempting to do with the rest of this session. So I appreciate that calibration. On that basis, I'm going to take you guys into one of the methods, which is called lean flow mapping. And that said is I had to make a conscious decision to put off a deeper dive into something called 5S. You could go on YouTube, and some of the best 5S examples are from the Boeing Corporation. They have a number of videos from Boeing on what 5S is. 5S, I touched upon in the last session very briefly, but it is a key concept, and it could have just as easily been presented here. And it's a unique concept in Lean, and I suggest you guys take an opportunity to look at the Boeing 5S videos. They're short. There's a few of them, but it's a key component. But I chose in this session to focus on lean flow mapping, which is something in the United States become one of the main practices in lean. So in this next hour or so, I'm going to attempt to help you understand how, after the chart is developed, the first step is to develop something called the SIPOC.
Adelante.
Say it again?
No, sorry. Go ahead. So
we prepare an event SIPOC, which is a framing of the problem after the charter has been developed. The first task of the team that now is assembled is to further contextualize what the intent of the charter was all about. And we're going to do this in an effort to demonstrate the ability to develop current state map. So we go from executive planning session, give us the business priorities related to value streams. We take the value stream and we define the value stream by the charter. a chart is developed, now we're going to model, we're going to attempt to put into graphic illustration what that value stream looks like in a graphical representation vis-a-vis a map of some type. We're then going to analyze this map and what we call a current state of this map. And we're necking it down: executive planning session, value stream, charter, SIPOC, and value stream analysis. So when we begin to do a current state map, we're now engaging in value stream analysis, which I mentioned earlier. We're going to capture the existing process performance metrics and indicators that relate to the process under study. We're going to identify the process flow and utilization, waste, and the constraints that we might see there. And all this is done to make the process visible to the people in the room who actually do the work, because at this instant in time, they collectively now can look at it. I'm not just looking at it in my job, doing my thing. I'm looking at my problems. No one cares. At this point in time, we tell folks, stop. Stop what you're doing. Step back. Let's put up on the wall what we think we're doing here. And then let's have a conversation about that. That structured conversation is where the various lean tools are brought into play. Okay, here you see a picture on the wall back there of folks who have developed a value stream map. It's nothing more than a sticky, a Post-it note, sticky, using butcher paper on the wall. It's not real sophisticated. Verb nouns are used on a sticky point, Post-it to state an action, a component part of a process. This is intended to be a visual to help see and understand how material is flowing. You know, the throughput time, the waiting time, the processing time. So it's a big picture perspective, okay? And why do you map the process? It helps you identify opportunities where you see rework is built into the process as a hidden factory of some kind, because it's happened like that. So therefore we put 2 additional steps in just so we can watch that thing doesn't happen to us all the time. It uncovers actions performed at the wrong time or completely non-value-added steps, so on and so forth. So where employees' information or goods are moving too much, or maybe just there without a purpose, just for some reason it's left over from an ancient period of time in which it was once a valued thing and now it's just an impediment. And so all of these things are intended to become visible with the effort of a process map. And here are the 12 steps of how you go about process mapping. You want to first see the process. SIPOC is a way of illustrating the intent of the charter. It'll also, in a SIPOC, give you the boundaries of what starts and stops in this targeted process in which we're analyzing. It will encompass the triggering mechanism, which is the voice of the customer. Why are we even bothering doing this? Does someone really want to pay us for this? Are we just working too hard for the wrong reasons? All that kind of stuff. And then you begin to gather the important information and what's appropriate for the relevant scope of this particular undertaking. And I'll touch upon the fact that once you have that up, you're then going to step back and you're going to see the waste. How do you see the waste? You're going to walk the process from beginning to end, backwards and forwards, if you want. You're going to create a current state map. And there are other tools I'm going to highlight real quick, something called the spaghetti map, which is a physical plant layout kind of a mapping, where you actually would go around and walk as the product from this station to that station, back to this station to that station, and someone is going to record this, an administrator. This would be the build-up to the Kaizen event. The center core, or let's just say the implementer, the integrator, and administrator will walk this process as they're preparing to do a Kaizen event to get an insight into what's going on. And some of the tools to do that we call spaghetti maps. And for those administrative processes that are not physical in nature, we're not dealing with a plant, a physical plant that's manufacturing something, but we're in an office. And sometimes data goes from computer to computer to person, and a lot of times there are too many touch points and an information flow, which is akin to too much walking around, too much movement of the product in the physical world. And then to see the waste, we're going to step back and we're going to do an actual value analysis, because in Lean, it's all about value from the perspective of the customer, which in essence is saying we're tearing out all the waste. Now, in this effort, this is a deep dive into a lot of stuff, and it's useful in a mapping process to step away, clear your mind, and think to yourself, in an ideal world, what would I be doing? You know, what if money was not an object, so on and so forth, and I could just do what I need to do. This is a useful technique because once a team has delved into for a day and a half into what the problems are, and they go, oh my God, this thing is a mess. This is going to be a lot more time than we scoped for this. The usefulness of an ideal state map is you free your mind and change your reference, change your point of view. And it kind of clears the mind a bit so that you could begin to visualize what a true future state could possibly be. What can we do in the real world? We need to accommodate certain realities. We don't have all the money in the world. We have a budget here. We have a customer paying us because they're not satisfied with what we've been doing. We need
Daryl, may I ask you a question? Now that you mentioned there's a budget, and while you're doing the spaghetti map and create the current state map, do you talk about money there too? Like the budget? This costs so much. This.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's a data. Those are data points that have to be considered in the process.
Okay.
So very much so. Yeah. I mean, because the drivers could be time, cycle time. The drivers could be cost, reduction of cost. Drivers could be, we have too many people. We need to reduce numbers of people. We need to move people around. So all those become relevant based on the nature of the problem. So the short answer would be yes. And then we go about the task of developing from the future state map some type of an implementation plan, and then we implement that. And so I'm going to highlight now these high-level SIPOC things. So SIPOC, think of a SIPOC, which is an acronym for Supplier, Input, Process, Output, Customer. We are taking the charter and we're attempting to now make a graphic of the charter. And that's pretty much what we're doing. Okay. And I just mentioned these are the terms, right? Now, this is the first instance of a mapping at a high level. This is the 50,000 foot level. Suppliers. We're going to map this. This is a process that, I messed up. Sorry, you guys. The thing is on my screen. Can I move this? Yes, I can't. So the SIPOC is we're streamlining a travel request here. So I just picked this travel request as an example. Everybody travels in organizations, and this organization decided to deal with this, and you simply put in the things you know. I know that suppliers to this travel request process, I have a software company I use. I have a company who helps me manage the money to make sure things get paid. I've outsourced that. We Travel Inc. is sort of a travel agency, A1 Rent-A-Car. So these are the normal suppliers to a travel request. The inputs we get are the itinerary, a job order number so we know how to charge this thing, and the dates and so on and so forth, right? And the modes of transportation. Am I driving, flying, or what? Now, the key thing to focus on here is the process, because now becomes the first instance, and I'm trying to move this thing here. Sorry, guys. I'm having screen management problems. The process is where we really begin to delve into how to improve things. This simply, we're putting the process in the context of inputs, outputs, customers, and suppliers, okay? And on the right there, you see Atlantic North Coast, Northeast, Southeast, and so these are markets being served, customers in those markets that we fly to, okay? And I took a real basic example. Now, the way you would build a SIPOC model is you first name it. What is this process? And you would simply extract that from the charter. Then from your SIPOC, I mean, while we're right now building the SIPOC, right, we're developing it. Who's the customer of this thing? Could be a number of customers, right? All right. This process could benefit a number of customers. What are the outputs? You know, we have a process. This output gives what? It delivers an invoice to someone. It also delivers a ticket to the traveler, so on and so forth. And notice now, there is an intent. You build this from name the process, then identify the customer, then you're working backwards. What is it that the customer is going to receive from the process, and how do we produce it? And you really, this is where the art part of it takes place. You really produce it in that process, and there are certain things you need to consume in that process, and you are essentially building a context for that middle area called process to get an understanding of the problem space. And this is helping you translate the charter into a map. So it identifies at a high level the relevant factors. It's identifying key boundaries, and it's starting to begin to reveal to you certain metrics that are important, all right? And it's identifying inputs and outputs. Now, this is another view of how boundaries become evident in the SIPOC. So the process is what we're interested in, right? And you always and always are always thinking in lean of the customer. Don't forget the customer, or you run the risk of improving a process that efficiently provides something other than what the customer really cares about or really thought they were getting. Okay, so it can't be overstated that this is always from the customer's point of view. And where are the fence posts? The start and stop is really what we're interested in, and that sometimes has to be discussed to make sure everyone's on the same page. Now, I was going to ask for the Guadalajara office to develop their travel request process, but you know, I don't know if that's a smart thing. But let me ask this question from the guys in Guadalajara. You guys travel. Does this look typical of what you travel? You request the generator request. Somebody generate. I need to go here to do this with this client, and the transport request is generated. Some type of order is made by the management in the office, and tickets are bought, so on and so forth. The person goes on travel. They come back and they file their claim to get reimbursed.
Yes, I'd say that's pretty much it.
Okay.
With the only exception that steps 1, 2, and 3 are all managed by the same person because of the flexibility we have right now. But thinking of a typical client of us or any typical organization, I think those 5 steps make sense. I don't know if you're just missing one last step, which is to pay the claim.
Yes.
Would you go into that detail or no?
Yes, you would go in that detail. It's a good question. So basically, you would want to go in that detail, and that's the kind of question that gets asked, you know, when you are looking at making the next step. So I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. I think that's all the stuff I've said. So I'm gonna highlight this. So
Daryl, just one question. Alvaro, what do you mean by paying the claim?
Yeah, so the travel process really finishes when all the expenses are reimbursed, right?
Right. I mean, so, and that becomes the discussion. See, in the conversation, when I mean, Alvaro's spot on, because there could easily be, this is based on what he just observed, there could be a step 6 here, and herein lies the art of you bounding the problem space. You know, start to stop. Here they selected to stop at file the claim. Alvaro is saying, really, they should have stopped at pay the claim. Claim gets filed, but actually the thing's not closed off. And to the customer in the travel process, the customer, one could argue, is the traveler looking to be paid, right? I mean, that's an easy case to make. So it's a good way of illustrating the conversation that might happen when you're trying to define the problem space you're dealing with. You could have just as easily added a 6th step and say pay the claim and be completely there, okay? So it's art more than science in this instance. And here's develop a current state map for hiring, an example. This is a generic one I pulled out. And here is where it begins. So let's say this was derived from the SIPOC at a high level. Everybody on the team looked at it for the value stream analysis and decided, you know what? This element of the value stream is where our challenges are. Internal sourcing. Break that down. Let's hold off on doing anything, analyzing these problems or analyzing these steps in the process for any insights. We all have a sense in the room. The internal sourcing is our issue. We break that down. And you break it down somewhere between 6 to 9 steps. You know, anything more than that becomes too confusing. 6 to 9 steps gets you where you need to be. You break it down once. From internal sourcing, we see when we're hiring someone, there's a review the sort list, review star search data, post on some database, review, and then coordinate with the current supervisor, right? But you can also take and decide, this is really, this stuff is okay, but this is where we are. So in essence, the bottom line, you guys, is when you're doing mapping, there may be a need to cascade the visibility of the problem 1 or 2 or 3 layers. Rarely ever have I ever seen a map go from SIPOC level to a first sub-process, second sub-process. Rarely have I seen it go lower than that, because you could start whacking away or start redefining or start eliminating steps along the way, thereby improving this process, making this overall process run faster, better, cheaper. Does that make sense?
Yes, completely.
And so process mapping is one of the key tools. Now, when you're process mapping, the question was asked, does money show up or anything like that? And whether it's manufacturing or transactional / office kind of environment, the thing that triggers it is an identified, the customers ask for you to come out, whatever, or we now need to hire somebody. Whatever is triggering that value stream to function, the need is to gather significant data. And here are typical things. Takt time is a technical term in Lean, which means the demand signal from the customer. I want an Adizes associate out at my plant once a week for 2 days. All right. He or she needs to be there. So takt time is a demand signal from a customer. That takt time is, I need you every 2 days or whatever. Okay. Lead time is the time it takes to get everything in the process going. Lead time inherently means we have some waiting. We have some waste in there, inherently, somewhat. Completion criteria is, how do you know you have a successful thing? So this is simply an illustration of the kinds of indicators. Cycle time, in my opinion, is the most important of all indicators. Work in process, an indicator of waste. Closeout time, distance traveled, percent rework. These are all items in which you can track you can baseline, target improvements, and track. Now, what I have here, you guys, are some of the common symbols in Lean. Now, I'll be honest with you. We never use these in my practice. We use the glasses every now and then. And we always use project burst to indicate this is going to be a challenge. And we probably need to assign some resources there. I rarely ever use any of these. We use simple Post-it notes, and we would write a verb noun on the Post-it note, and we would string them together. But I thought it's important to let you see what are some of their typical flows. And they can get real fancy with this stuff, right? Here is a typical current state map. Now, here's what I want to point out to you. In a Lean map, you could use any kind of little illustrations you want to make the thing clear. This is obviously saying we're sending a truck to this customer here, right? But here's the key point about this slide. At the top of the slide, you have database kinds of things, database resources, electronic, see this electronic link here? These are databases and software and anything dealing with information systems of some kind. And I'll tell you, in a Lean event, most people will try to immediately say, let's develop a system for that. No, that's to avoid that at every cost. Whatever existing systems are, put them up at the top part of the illustrated chart the butcher paper. You could draw it. You could put a Post-it note, however you want. Usually this little jagged thing here means customer, right? That means there's a customer. And essentially, the triggering is a phone call. It goes into order management, and thus begins, some data collection. We've lost calls 10% of the time. The volume is 1,200. And what you have here in the middle would be those steps that we talked about, where Alvaro said, could we put potentially pay to claim on there? These are the process steps that are put in the middle. So in a value stream current state map, at the top, you illustrate the data points, the databases, the connections, the networks that are interacting with this process that you put in the middle. You then would assign the indicators of which you have an interest in improving. What do we want to improve? Process time, the error rate, the volume. You want to put the indicators that, and it could be anything, and I won't take up a lot of our time by specifying. Just know that there is something about this process step for which metrics matter, of what is the underlying reason why you decided to look at this one and take some people offline to improve it. You must have a few set of indicators. You don't need 6 or 8, but you do need a couple. And the third part of a value stream map would be the time. Okay, so the total time is the lead time. Process time is whenever you come up here, right? I'm engaged. So 3 minutes is here. Here. Question?
Yeah, just one moment. Is there a way you go about defining these targets? You said error rate, volume. Is it defined depending on the organization, or is there?
No. Yeah. So this comes from the insight. When I mentioned earlier, get the people who do the work in this event, because the process that's to be improved must be improved by the people who actually do the work. They know these things. They can discuss amongst themselves with a good facilitator. Does it take a day for this product to get through the process? Does it take 2 weeks? Why does it take 2 weeks? So that conversation, those insights, and those numbers be their swag. Wild ass guesses. They may come in with a stack of data that they could categorically say, well, okay, so the number for this is that, the number for this is that. They may not have that. Okay, whatever they have, be it hard data, be it soft data, you want to draw a baseline on the key important indicators. And those can only come from the people who do the work, who have an insight into what the problem is. Does that make sense? I mean, you could have hard data to give them. They may have their own insight. It could be a combination of those two. The point is that, did we name the process right? Customer information, product need, pricing, shipping information, So this is all under the order management process. And customer information to me is not a good bumper sticker. I like verb noun, order part, gain customers input. I like verb noun descriptors for my process steps. You attach an indicator to those process steps based on available data and or knowledge of the people doing the work. And then a timeline is estimated at the bottom. So for the 2 minutes that something's happening there, I'm good. And then it ticks up because I'm waiting. So you're adding up the amount of time. So time is an element on the current state map. Indicators are an element. Actual block description of a process. And then an accounting of the network software databases that might be implemented with the current state.
Is there a tool that you use to define this entire process? Including the timeline below, including the targeted. Is there a tool which is a very simple one to use so that we could do
there
this?
Are tools. Yes, there are tools out there. iGraphics is a tool. We try to use iGraphics. I'll tell you what I found in the real world is that taking butcher paper and markers and stickies gets me where we need to be. And here's the thing, you guys. So there are tools out there, Sridhar, but in my experience, we go into a room, we put the butcher paper up, we get sticky Post-it notes because we can move Post-it notes around and stuff. As people are discussing what process step comes before the other one, so on and so forth. So yes, there are tools. And in fact, when I showed you these illustrations right here, you could buy this in 2 or 3 different tools and they'll do some of this stuff automatically for you. I'm not a fan of that, but they exist. I'm a fan of get up, get the work done, put it up on the wall. Let's talk about it. I'm a fan of that. And some Excel spreadsheets that we developed in-house, which I could give to you guys. So essentially, here's the goal.
Daryl, I have a question. To create this type of processing, is it actually a RIE type of thing?
Mm-hmm. This happens in the rapid improvement event. Okay. This happens during the Kaizen. The first step in the Kaizen is to map the current state.
Okay. And also, would you do this only for the transformation process?
What do you mean for the transformation process?
Well, this one that we're looking at seems like a transformation process, right?
What do you mean when you say transformation process? Yeah, yes, right, yes. You talking about like on the Adizes map? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like yes. In the transformation subsystem.
Yes, that would be my opinion, but not exclusively. But this one particularly looks like that. But you could do this for any one of the blocks in that attribute map, in my opinion.
Okay.
Not so much maybe for column 1, maybe, but yes. Now, here's the main takeaway from this current state map, you guys. The reason you do a current state map, you want everyone in the room to understand we have a mess here. And so you want a current state map to be as busy as all get out, because you want for that team to go, oh my God, is this what we're doing? You want that in the room. You want that confusion there, because at that point, they're going to be dependent on the good facilitator to say, and to make it known, don't worry, we're going to get through this. We will get through this. And that's a very important point to understand, that a current state map is really to illustrate the mess that's going on at the moment in time. That's current state map purpose. Okay. Now, here's a future state map, which, you look at the current state map, we go back, and I picked a couple examples to quickly go through this so you could see. And I could have picked a better current state map that was a lot more busier than this one, but I didn't. But I wanted to let you guys know. Now, see, you got the truck thing coming across here. You got a few different things going on. And so, then I picked a future state map, which this is a hiring accountability lister. So what I didn't do, which was my bad, I picked an order management supervisor current state map, and I could have picked the future state map of the same thing, but I picked a different one, and it simply does this. These little explosive things are opportunities for improvement, right? Reduce this, improve that, improve visibility, reduce that. So you looked at a future state map says, we're going to look at certain areas, and we know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things evolved out of this for which we could target to make better. I just wanted to point out, this was the hiring accountability lister. And I had a hiring example earlier, and I showed you one, the previous current state map, which was from the order management. So you could take any process, be it hiring. Hiring would be an HR block, correct?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Right. So any of the blocks could benefit from mapping. So we'll skip the 15 minutes, develop a current state map for the sake of time. But notice here, this is one of our maps. You notice how we just drew lines, we used stickies, and we did what we could to identify all the indicators and show how busy this is, right? So any questions on current state map, future state map? I mean, I went through that very fast. I want you to appreciate SIPOC 50,000 foot. And then value stream map for the current state 10,000 foot. You know, you could drop that 2 or 3 more layers down and really get down. But essentially, when you stop off to do a current state map, you want to illustrate to folks, we have a problem. Okay. And then you'll go through some processes to identify a future state map. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more now.
I have a question,
Yes.
Daryl.
Yes.
Going from the current to the future state maps, do you use any particular, notations to what must remain the same? So by criteria or by design, what
Yes.
you're not allowed to change?
Yes. All right. So let me go fast forward for the sake of time. All right. I'll come back to the spaghetti map. Let me address the question. I think it was Alvaro asked. I'm going to go right to the key thing here, and I can come back to some of those other tools. But to your question, you put up a current state map, right? It's a very good question, very timely question. How do you go from a current state map to a future state map? Okay. You're going to conduct what we call value analysis. The objective is to eliminate the hidden costs that do not add value to the customer, reduce unnecessary complexity, reduce the process cycle time. Cycle time is the thing you want to reduce, and increase capacity so that you have better utilization of your resources. That's the objective. How do you get from that current state map to the future state map is a function of assigning these nomenclatures to those verb noun process blocks. You saw all those mini blocks we had up on the wall there, you guys? An exercise now ensues. We got the current state map. Oh my God, look at this mess. Not to worry, guys. We're about to do a value analysis to get us to the future state. How do you do that? You assign value added, non-value added, or business value designations to those sticky Post-it notes. And again, you could buy a tool to do all of this. I was a proponent of people get up, go to the wall, and let's work on this wall, make this thing better. So value added, activities that change form, fit, or function of a product or service, activities that the customer wants and is willing to pay for, and activities that are done right the first time. That is the definition of a value added step. It's that way across the board. And anyone who's practicing lean, these are the 3 non-negotiables, period. It must add, it must change form, fit, or function of the product or service. The customer is willing to pay for it and know about it, that particular step, and it's done right the first time. That is the definition of value added in the lean world. Non-value added is activities that do not change form, fit, or function, and the activities that fall under any of the 8 forms of waste: waiting, over-processing, overproducing, underutilization of people's mind, brains, and such, and movement, excessive movement, and so on. Any of the 8 wastes, if you could say that's waiting, then it is not a value-added step, and by definition, non-value-added. Activities not performed right the first time, rework, particularly problematic in manufacturing. Less clear-cut and transactional. Well, transactional is a little more clear-cut than office processes, which tend to have documents bouncing around. And as you're editing, is that rework or not? So it's a little more fuzzy with office work. Business value. Here goes to Alvaro's question behind his question. Activities causing no value to be created, which cannot be eliminated based on current requirements. You're producing a product and you have the choice to have a cheaper additive mix of something, but it's carcinogenic, it's cancerous. There's some health issue with it. Therefore, government regulations don't allow you to use compound A, okay? And so that would be business value. It's essentially non-value added, but because either policy of the company or a regulatory requirement, you must put it in there, even though the customer really doesn't care. To summarize, any step or activity in a process is considered value added if it meets all of the following. Customer wants it and is willing to pay for it. It changes form, fit, or function of the product and or service. It's done right the first time, no rework. In looking at that, you could do it for work centers.
Sorry, Daryl, could you go back just one slide? So on the second criteria, if it changes form, fit, or function of the product or service, could the time cycle, could that also be included there or no?
Well, cycle time is an indicator of how long it's actually taking you to do that work. Mm-hmm. So cycle time, you have to pay for cycle time to do the work. However, if you could reduce cycle time, it's a good thing. So cycle time is an adjacent to the three criteria.
So it's more of an output to any of these three criteria.
Yes. You're doing your stuff here, and you're doing it in one day. You look at some things you can improve. You put some burst on your current state chart. Say, we can improve this. We can reduce that. We can improve that capacity. Now, let's do that. Step back away. Theoretically, your cycle time was reduced. Okay? So it's an outcome, yeah.
And all three have to be met, right?
All three have to be met. All three have to be met for each post-it. When you put a process block up there, okay, the question becomes this. Let me see. Okay. Wait. All right. Let me go back to the post-it thing. Sorry. See these post-it? The question is asked for each one of the post-it. Now, I think the blue post-it means, it's a database or something like that. The yellow ones generally in the middle here was the main process, This was like the main process here. So as I recall, that's how we would do it. Sometimes you'd have a lot of processes, okay? So basically, for each post-it, you would ask that question. Does it change form, fit, or function? Is it done right the first time? Is the customer willing to pay for that? That question is asked for each process step. And if that process step does not meet the criteria, then we put a red dot on it. So we have red dotted post-it notes. Once we go through the value analysis steps. Sorry, I don't know how to get to this next slide. 44. I think it's not moving. So these are kinds of examples of non-value added business value stuff, right? You can go back. Non-value added activities account for 50 to 90% of product costs, right? And that's the going in position we have a lot of times. But these post-its, we would buy these little packages of these little post-its, and we would basically, in our value analysis, we ask those three questions for each one of those steps, and we put a red dot if it's non-value added. If it can't meet all three, it's non-value added. Now, somebody may argue for that step later on. The team is going through this fast, right? Green dots get to stay. So when you are designing the future state map, there could be also some business value things, regulations. We can't get away from it. The company wants to do this because it's part of our brand or whatever. All right. What you then do is you step away and you then put up another map with only the green dots and the yellow dots. And then you will subtract however many red dots, they simply go away, and you redesign that process based on green dots. And then you look to see all the time. See, this is why it's important to have a metric indicator on each one of those charts, on each one of those post-it notes, because when you take all those red dots away, and that red dot say it's going to take 2 hours to do this task. It's going to take 1 hour. You take all those red dots away, you add up all those hours of projected time it would take, according to the people who are in the room that does the work. And they've agreed, either in consensus or whatever their rules of engagements were going to be, they've agreed that the red dots are put aside, we tally up the reduction if we eliminate those red dots, and that's where your cycle time improvements may manifest, okay? So, I don't know, do we have red dots here? I can't really see this one. So, any questions up there here, you guys?
The process of allocating red dots is a conflict-ridden one, right? So there is a lot of discussion when you do this, right?
Yes. A lot of
is there some? I think the green belt and the black belt are trained in a general facilitation mode, okay, to make this as an art, right? It's an art that they follow, right? The green belt
Yes.
guys.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It's not so much scientific. It is more art than scientific, right?
Yes.
Scientific would be 8 steps. You know, you follow these 8 steps of decision making, right?
Mm-hmm.
Art would be the person is using his own ingenuity to sort of get a consensus, right?
Yes. Yeah. And you know what happens at that? See, what I would tell people if the facilitator, I would tell the green belts, if you're exhausted at the end of this session, you've not done your job well. What you want is for that team to be spent. You want for the person with passion. You want the person with passion about those 3 steps to argue up and down why it's important, even though 8 other people say it's not. And you know, you just need to let them bang that stuff out. And they will either relent or something, or say, you know, I give it a yellow dot. I'm tired of arguing about it with it. But getting that out in that red, yellow, green dot session is where the action takes place to reduce waste and to make the process visible in everybody's mind. And so, you know, people will go get a document, say, this is why that needs to be there. But that whole conversation, we would always tell folks, bring me chapter and verse. And then if we still didn't want it, we would go then to the value stream champion, the process sponsor, and say, hey, this policy is holding us up. Can you look at it for us? And those are the interactions that go on with that intense week. So 2 quick things. I covered fast. I came back to this after answering Alvaro's question. All this illustrates, you guys, is someone walked this plant floor on the top here and realized that materials and technicians are moving around way too much. And that's waste, that's time. If they lay the plant out differently after analyzing the amount of time it takes and the amount of effort it takes and the man hours and overtime it takes to get stuff done with all this movement, they relay the plant out and realize we can reduce that substantially by moving around things. This is a physical example of making the process visible, okay? And it's called the spaghetti diagram. And it's actually looking at how material move. This is a slide that builds. This is a slide for anything that's in the office that's transactional, informationally based sort of. What you have here is essentially, this is the number of times that this current state approach has handoffs, 47 handoffs, clock time, 486 hours to do this manual thing. Now, this is a document that's going from one organization to the other to make sure this drawing package, these design specifications, whatever it is, ordering of equipment, whatever it is, it's an information flow. And this is a way to show you how many times this information is touching someone somewhere for some reason. I did it. I need to send it to my boss so she can make sure my documentation is in order based on her mandate to check everybody's work, blah, blah, blah. And at some point in time, you just get busy with all this stuff, okay? Whereas when you look to improve that and you say, can we eliminate anybody out of this process and therefore reduce the number of handoffs, substantially reduce the flow clock time, the total time it takes to do something, and the number of touches. So we see here in this example, the manual touch time was reduced almost in half. The flow time, the total time, flow time is total time. Throughput time is another way of saying flow time. Throughput, flow, that's the total time. Total time in the original current state, 486 hours. We rethought this and thought the bare minimum of goodness and quality to assure that things happen right. These are the only people who need to do it. You know, need to see that particular document. And this is a way of mapping information challenges in an office. And with that, you know, I mean, I'm done here, you guys. I told you this was a lot this time, and hopefully you guys got a better insight into what are the key tools in Lean Six Sigma. This was all about Lean today, and it's primarily giving you an idea of how to map and to do the value analysis. Now, I'll end up showing you this. Okay, so, all that gets done, and with that future state map where you saw the burst and things, that future state map gets put into an action plan. And I can provide you the Excel sheet for this. I just kind of did this one up. And notice there are savings identified. There's a person responsible, the originator, whoever brought this to the table, the responsible party, stop dates to implement the thing. It's simple action plan. Events, projects, and just do it. So out of a value stream map, what the yield is we have a number of activities we need to engage with. Because this particular group were the group dealing with the highest level of the value stream. Out of that, we could have a number of additional rapid improvement events, 1 or 2 projects, and some just do it. So we just mapped the value stream at a high level, and we now have an action plan in which to implement. And I'll leave it at that, So that pretty much wraps up today. I know I went fast at the end there. Your thoughts, you guys?
Do you want me to do a reinforcement, Daryl?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's start with you, Sridhar. How do you feel about today's meeting?
Yeah, I feel filled with a decent amount of information. Seeing these tools is good. It's a structure. My comment on this would be that at the in some subsequent sessions, if there is a senior associate who has a little bit of grounding in Lean, would be able to come on board and give us the perspective, because once we see this data that is sent by the PDF, we'll absorb something, but at the end we'll be able to connect and say, yes, there are things which we overdo in Lean, or this we don't do well, or this is a more structured way of doing, and that would help us combine. So some way in which we can integrate both of this, but it's good to maintain this purest view as of now. Enjoy the session.
Okay, pass the word to Vladimir's.
Hello guys. Appreciate Daryl for all the information that you are giving us. And from my point of view, I see a couple of things that a kind of Adizes methodology is a little bit superior, because these things we address only 4 or 5 columns, but we go deeper with the structure and goals, stuff like this, which is more essential for a company to work really efficient and effective. But from a point of view how to deal with 4 or 5 columns, Lean has really good tools, which I think we could use in senior teams, like to map these processes and to map the desired processes and stuff. It could be used. Actually, it's pretty common sense, and yeah, this is something useful. Thank you, Daryl.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Pass the word to Jorge Nieto.
So thank you, Daryl. I really enjoyed this session very much. It was a bit hard for me to concentrate today, and with all this information, I'm a bit overwhelmed. And yes, I do have many questions, but I understand this is some sort of superficial insight on Lean Six, and but I think it's a very powerful tool that can cope with what we do in Adizes. It's been also a bit hard for me, like, to get that chip off Adizes and just concentrate on Lean Six, and I compared it a lot. But I would like to reread all the slides you sent to us and refresh all we've discussed in this couple hours. But I'm impressed of this tool. I enjoy it very much, and I think it's going to be very helpful for me in future sessions. So thank you so much.
Good.
Okay, pass the word to Selko.
Hello. I appreciate to Daryl. Thank you. And I'm very impressed with these tools you present to us, and agree with Vladimir said and Jorge too. Next.
Okay, pass the word to Alvaro.
Thank you, Daryl, for your time. I think this is exactly what I was expecting. We've been talking about this course for probably a couple of years now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what I was expecting, just to get a quick overview of tools that other methodologies use. And I think there's a complementary nature to what Adizes does. For some scenarios, just expanding the tool belt. And I think this group has now probably a different challenge. I would love from this group to emerge some recommendations to add, particularly to phases 2 and 3, where I think most of these will make more sense, and to be discussed in the next colloquia, and just to expand the tool belt. It's clear that you have a very good understanding of what the content was, and I'm very happy with today.
Okay, thank you, Alvaro. Well, to me, this was a great session, especially the last 30 minutes. I think, as Alvaro said, there are some very interesting tools that we can use on phase 2 and 3. And thank you very much, Daryl. Pass the word to you.
Well, I really deeply appreciate you guys taking the time to do this on a Saturday and staying interested. Thank you for the calibration to just talk in terms of the purist. I think that's a great way of doing it. I'm just very happy that you guys are there. I'll try to post up some assets, some resources that might lend itself, because I consciously made the decision not to put a few different things in, and invariably some of the questions came up about those things. So this was the basic set, but based on the conversation today, I'm going to load up into the dive on some additional tools to complement this session based on the questions that came in. So thank you guys so much for taking the time. I very much appreciate it. And see you guys next week. We will be dealing with Six Sigma. And
Thank you too.
yes.
Thank you. Good weekend, everybody.
Have a good weekend.
Good weekend too.
Have
Bye.
a good weekend. I saw the beaches there. Wonderful, yeah?
Yeah, I'm definitely enjoying the beach. Yeah.
Envy you. Okay.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.